4-0 they lost against Minnesota in pre-season. Now, we can't ever read too much into pre-season. We never know whether it's an indicator for a good or bad start to the campaign. But bearing in mind their first opponents are Chelsea, they need to be on the mettle. And at the moment, their squad just doesn't look strong enough, does it? I mean, you look at their forward options, Calvert-Lewin, Sims and Rondon, their wingers, Gordon and Gray. There's not too much else for Everton fans to get excited about. In that middle of midfield, Dele Alli missed a big chance in that game. Defensively, they've added Tarkowski, but they need numbers, don't they?
Yeah, they've got to get numbers in, Sam, and I think they probably will before the season starts. I think the worrying thing is after a really disappointing Premier League season last time around, you go into pre-season. I've been in this situation myself where I've went through a full pre-season and not winning a match. But then when the season starts, everything starts to kick into gear and you start winning football games. But the worrying thing for me is the season that they had last, and then that's continued through pre-season. They probably lost their best player. He's not being replaced, so the Evertonians are obviously getting frustrated. I mean, we just heard Andy Gray and what he was saying about the football club and saying there's been bad mismanagement, whether it's from the top with Moshiri bringing in the wrong managers to the football club.
Spending £500 million
a lot of
not
money,
very much.
And financial fair play has been a worry as well. I mean, the two transfers was Gray and Townsend, wasn't it? The two free transfers, and now they've not done anything in the summer, and they need to get.
I don't think Andros is 100% fit yet, is he?
No, I'm not too sure if he is, but is he going to change the outcome of Everton's season? Is it going to be a relegation fight, what Frank Lampard has came out and said? He should not have come out and said those words, because that's not what you want to hear as a manager.
Isn't he just being realistic, though?
Well, he is, yeah, but I think Andy hit the nail on the head. You know, you don't say that to supporters in a pre-season. You've got to get there and say to the players, right, we underachieved massively last season. I need to get another 15-20% out of the players, and the players that walk through the door obviously are going to try and make Everton better. But when your best players left for 60 million quid, it's not being spent on recruitment and bringing players back in because they've had worries over the last season and a half with FFP. They need something to happen at Everton. I mean, the worry is that 60 million quid going to be going towards the new stadium?
Well, because that's another big question. This is why Everton fans are going to step up their protests over how the club is run with a demonstration plan against Farhad Moshiri. They're going to protest tomorrow. It's going to take place outside Goodison Park with organisers the 27 campaign, whose name reflects the number of years the club has gone without a trophy, citing a complete mismanagement of footballing operations by Moshiri and the rest of the Everton board. Are they right to protest?
Yes and no, because I think Moshiri has gone there with good intentions. You look at the money that he's invested, as Andy Gray said in that excellent interview. It's not like he hasn't backed Everton managers. They've just spent money badly, and as he said, probably appointed the wrong coaches in the case of Marco Silva and Rafa Benitez in particular. Koeman didn't work out well either, but that looked a decent appointment at the time. But if I was an Everton fan, I'd be worried about the departure of Duncan Ferguson as well. I know the reason we were given was because he wants to go and be his own man, wants to make his own way in management, but he hasn't walked into a job. If Duncan Ferguson, an Everton legend, someone who's been a key part of the coaching staff for a number of seasons, was convinced in this project, I think he'd have stayed.
But was he a key part of it? And he got overlooked for the job and then ended up staying until the end of the season.
Once.
But shouldn't he have gone then? If he was a man of principle.
Yeah.
So I would be a bit concerned by that. And the second reason I'd be concerned by that is because we've seen the relationship that he had with Dominic Calvert-Lewin and how he improved him, particularly in the air, as a centre forward.
But it didn't work for much of last season.
Injuries took its toll last
season.
I
think Ancelotti had a lot to do with that as well, didn't he?
But Calvert-Lewin has credited Duncan Ferguson. I'm told the two were very close, and that actually when it comes to Calvert-Lewin's future, and there are clubs like Newcastle who are sniffing around, maybe the departure of Duncan Ferguson might make him think twice about his position at the football club. And then there's the Frank Lampard situation. Now, I'm wondering, given how unhappy he looked the other night, is Frank Lampard perhaps regretting taking this challenge? Because we know why he took the challenge. He felt it was too big an opportunity to turn down, and he felt like he had to get back in. Obviously, he rejected Norwich's advances, Everton, a far bigger football club. But already he's speaking like a man who knows he's facing an uphill battle.
Well, he is facing an uphill battle. One look at the squad tells you that, and he certainly didn't assemble that squad. So trying to get the best out of it is going to be a huge job. I mean, the fans are also unhappy at the club's financial performance, which resulted in the sale of their striker Richarlison for £60 million in order to help them comply with the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. There are also concerns over how the club's new stadium is going to be funded at Bramley Moor Dock. And just last week, Moshiri called for patience from the Everton fans, and he says, judge me at the end of the transfer window. In order for him to be judged kindly by the supporters at the end of the transfer windows, how many new signings are Everton going to need, do you think?
5?
At least. It has to be 5. I mean, Gray was a success when he walked through the door. I thought he hit the ground running.
Especially at the beginning of the season.
Yes.
But it sort of tapered off,
He
didn't it?
did. Same with Townsend, who couldn't then get himself into the starting 11. Calvert-Lewin obviously had major injuries last season. So I think in those forward positions, I think you have to replace Richarlison, whether they need something else going forward. Alan, has he got a full season in him? They always seem to pick up injuries or suspensions, etc. So you've got to have a few more bodies in that midfield area. Tarkowski's come in at the back to probably play alongside Michael Keane. Coleman, can he go on forever? You know, I mean, he's been an incredible player for Everton Football Club, but do they need another right back? I mean, they changed the left back position as well.
Which they Rangers, didn't they? He's a young player. But
yeah, but they didn't want
barely featured.
He didn't feature
Luca
at all.
Digne was the argument with Rafa Benitez. That transfer didn't really
But
need
in
to
a way,
happen.
that sums up the mismanagement. The fact that they basically offloaded one of their best players because he'd fallen foul of a manager who they then sacked, 2 weeks later? Mm. It was a crazy decision.
And that can only be held on the club, can't it? I mean, that can only be pinned on the Everton board. 03717223344. Loads of text messages coming in on this. Everton's problem is collective responsibility from top to bottom. Previous managers, 2 directors of football, average players at best, high wages. It's not Lampard's fault. He says it as it is. Need players ASAP. Lingard, no thanks. Terry, the Everton fan in Liverpool. Andy Gray's wrong according to Mark on the Wirral. We want Frank speaking the truth. We have asked for nothing else but the truth for the last 25 years. If we're garbage, then we want the players told they're garbage, no matter what time of the season. What is wrong with Everton is and always has been Bill Kenwright. That's from Mark on the Wirral.
But, and we had another text coming actually that we haven't read out there, suggesting that if the manager of Everton is trying to recruit players, and clearly they are trying to attract new players to the football club, by coming out and saying we're in a relegation battle, does that help negotiations? If you're telling players like Morgan Gibbs-White, who we'll talk about later, come and join us, but by the way, we're going to be scrapping for survival, that doesn't look like a particularly tasty proposition.
What do you think about that? Because you would have been in a situation where you've had to move clubs. How is it that it works? Do you look at the position of the club? Are you interested in the position of the club? Or do you think when you're moving to a new club, well, I'm going to be part of a new project and it's being sold to me, and if Frank Lampard's on the end of the phone, then you're going to be more convinced to join them than maybe if that wasn't the case? If
you want to better yourself and you're hearing things like that from a manager of a club that you're supposed to be joining, then you look elsewhere. You don't want to hear things like that. You want to hear positivity from managers and, talking about bringing 5 or 6 new faces into the club, and you want to be a part of that. You want to be one of those players. But the way that Everton finished the season, last season, was just absolutely horrendous. I mean, you could see the relief on Frank's face when he won those couple of games. It was Crystal Palace, I think, wasn't it, at the end of the season?
But you could expect that. I mean, he's parachuted in to save the football club, and he did it, and in a dramatic way.
And what it took,
the relief on everybody's face was quite high.
What it took was 2,500-3,000 Evertonians outside following the coach to the ground,
raising the
to
atmosphere.
spur those players when the manager couldn't get that out of them. Because the weeks prior to that were absolutely horrific.
That wasn't true. I mean, they beat Manchester United, they beat Chelsea.
Everybody was beating Manchester United at that moment.
Did they play well in them games? Yeah, they won the games. Did they play well in them? No, they didn't.
Chelsea were on a poor run at that stage. Exactly. It was a good time to play both those teams.
But the atmosphere changed.
Lampard bashing session.
No, the atmosphere changed in that stadium at Goodison Park when the supporters started coming outside of the ground, following the coach,
absolutely,
and getting behind the players.
But he tapped into that, didn't he? And he got the best out of those players for the last few weeks of the season.
Well,
Richarlison was clearly playing for a move. That helped.
I think Newcastle was a similar scenario. If you look at the way Newcastle acted when Eddie Howe walked through the door with the new signings and obviously the ownership change in there, because they were going down. They were the same as Everton. And something happened. There was a spur at that club, and then they just got this massive boost. And I covered a lot of the games at the end of the season. It was an incredible place to go.
And you never heard Eddie Howe talk in the same sort of terms
absolutely
that
not.
Before a competitive ball has been kicked Frank Lampard is speaking. I just think it sets the wrong tone after a pre-season friendly. And as Mickey says, you can't really read too much in friendly results.
03717223344. Keep your text messages coming in. Mark, the Everton fan, has got in touch with us. He said he agrees with everything that Andy has said. Obviously there's another point of view here, and Farhad Bashiri, if he was on the programme, would probably say, look, I promised you a new stadium, that's going up. I promised you a new director of football. Kevin Thirlwall is in to do that, former Wolverhampton Wanderers director of football, and a fan advisory board is in place. So he's answered a lot of the critics that were labelled at him. But ultimately, if Everton Football Club, having spent the money they've spent, are challenging the likes of Nottingham Forest for players, challenging the likes of Fulham for players, challenging clubs in and around the bottom three for recruits, then that is a real problem.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.